Hello everyone, in this video we are going to learn the concept of Wronskian, certain properties of Wronskian and the linear independence and dependence of given functions. So let's begin with the definition of what a Wronskian is. Suppose you are given two functions f and g defined on some common domain, say I, then their Wronskian is defined to be the 2 cross 2 determinant comprising of f and g in the first row and their derivatives in the second row. So what you have to do is you have to take the given functions as the row of the determinant. The first row of the determinant is the functions themselves, and under every function you have to write its derivative. So it's understood that we can define Wronskian of functions only if the functions are differentiable, otherwise f dash and g dash will not make sense. So we just open it as a 2 cross 2 determinant, so it becomes f into g dash minus f dash into g. So that's the definition of a Wronskian. For example, if you want to calculate the Wronskian of a function, say x and x square, fx is x, gx is x square, then the Wronskian will be given by x and x square in the first row, the derivative of x, which is 1, the derivative of x square, which is 2x in the second row, and then you open it as a 2 cross 2 determinant. So it's 2x square minus x square, so the answer will be x square. So that's how Wronskians are determined. So this is how Wronskian of two functions is defined. Now we can generalize this definition to Wronskian of n given functions, which are obviously n minus 1 times differentiable, because we'll be needing n minus 1th order derivative of all these functions to define the Wronskian. So we need functions which are n minus 1 times differentiable, and the Wronskian is given by, again you do the same thing. In the first row you take the functions, in the second row you take their first derivatives, in the third row you will take the second derivatives, and so on, and in the last row you will take the n minus 1th order derivative of all of them. So this obviously will make sense if these functions are n minus 1 times differentiable. So let's quickly have a look at certain examples in which calculation of Wronskian has been done. So Wronskian of cos x and sin x, obviously cos x, sin x, and then their derivatives. Derivative of cos x is minus sin x, derivative of sin x is cos x, so you open it as a 2 cross 2 determinant to get it as 1. Let's calculate the Wronskian of these three functions. So you take these three functions here in the first row, their derivatives in the second row, their second order derivatives in the third row, and then after opening it along any row or column, we can see that it simplifies to 26 e to power minus 3x. So that's how Wronskians are calculated. So let's come to another idea, because we are going to connect the concept of Wronskian to linear dependence and independence of solution. So let's understand what linear dependence and independence means. Suppose we are given two functions f and g on a common domain, say I. They are said to be linearly independent if one is not a scalar multiple of the other. So you cannot write the first function as a scalar multiple of the other, or the second function as the scalar multiple of the first. If that's the scenario, you'll say that they are linearly independent. For example, we are going to do examples in a little while, a lot of examples in fact. So let's quickly understand what is linear dependence. As the name suggests, something to a pair of functions is linearly dependent if it's not linearly independent. So that means one function is going to be a constant multiple of the other in this case. So let's quickly have a look at the examples. Look at sin x and cos x. Sin x cannot be written as a constant multiple of cos x. That's not true for every x. So they are linearly independent. X and mod x. See, mod x, what is mod x? Mod x is x if x is greater than or equal to 0, and it's minus x if x is less than 0. So x and mod x, you can see that x is same as x. So it's a scalar multiple on the non-negative side, but not on the whole domain. So there is an alternative way of checking whether two functions are linearly dependent or not. You can take f and g. The functions are linearly dependent if their ratio is equal to a constant k for every x lying in the domain. So if f and g are two linearly dependent functions, then their ratio will always be a constant. Now look at sin x upon cos x. Their ratio is not a constant. The ratio is tan x. Now x and mod x, their ratio will be 1 if x is greater than or equal to 0 and minus 1 if x is less than 0. So they are linearly independent on R. Whereas if you restrict the domain either to R plus or to R minus, then the ratio is going to become a single constant. For example, on R plus, x and mod x, if you consider, mod x will also be x on R plus, because if x is non-negative, mod x is same as x. So this is going to be the same as x. So x upon x will be 1. So their ratio is a constant on R plus, whereas their ratio is not a single constant on R. Therefore, these two functions are linearly independent on R but dependent on R plus. So you can see that the domain has a great role in deciding linear dependence or independence. It is very significant to mention the domain where you are discussing independence or dependence. The same functions may be dependent on a certain domain but not on another domain, as is justified by these two examples, number 2 and 3. So let's look at x plus 1 and x square. So if you take the ratio of x plus 1 by x square, it's not a constant on R. So you can say that they are linearly independent. Now let's look at sine square x and 1 minus cos 2x. We know that sine square x can be written as half times 1 minus cos 2x. So their ratio is equal to half, which is a constant. So they are linearly dependent on R. So that's how you decide linear dependence or independence of given two functions. So for 2, it's easy to see. Either you see one is a scalar multiple of the other or not, or you take their ratio. If the ratio is a single constant throughout the domain, then on that domain you'll have linear dependence, otherwise you'll have linear independence. Now how do we generalize this to n functions, say 3 functions, 4 functions? For 2, taking the ratio makes sense. What about 3 functions or 4 functions? There is a generalization of the definition of linear dependence and independence in this case, and that's given like this. N functions f1, f2, fn defined on an interval are linearly dependent if there exists constant c1, c2, cn, not all 0. That means at least one non-zero, at least one non-zero. Out of these constants, one should be non-zero such that the linear combination is 0. Now how does it generalize the above definition? Suppose out of c1, c2 and cn, suppose c2 is non-zero, then you can divide by c2, take everything else to the other side and write f2 as a linear combination of rest of them, because you can divide by c2 if c2 is non-zero. Suppose c1 is non-zero, you can divide by c1 and then f1 can be written as a linear combination of rest of them, like that. So if at least one constant is non-zero such that the linear combination is 0, then you'll have linear dependence. And whenever linear combination is 0, so its negation would be what? Let's negate this statement. Here you are getting at least one non-zero constant such that the linear combination is 0. Here, whenever the linear combination is 0, you'll have no option but all constants to be 0. There is no other option. No situation is going to give you at least one non-zero constant. All constants will be forced to be 0 whenever the linear combination is 0. So that's the generalized definition of linear independence and linear dependence. So let's have a look at certain examples here. So let's look at 2x. This is the first function given to us. The second function is 3x squared. The third function is 5x minus 8x squared. Now if I'm able to write the linear combination of these functions as 0 with at least one constant as non-zero, then I'll be done. Now this I've done by hit and trial. I chose this constant to be 1. So that makes it 2x, and adjusted this 5x by taking a minus 2 by 5 here so that x term cancels out. And then I adjust the x square term accordingly so that everything else cancels out to give me that 1 times the first function plus minus 16 by 15 times the second function plus minus 2 by 5 times the third function is 0, where c1, c2, c3 all are non-zero. Had only one also been non-zero, we would have said linear dependence. Here all are non-zero. So the best scenario is available for linear dependence. So these 3 functions, 2x, 3x square and 5x minus 8x square, are very much linearly dependent on R. So let's look at another example. It's not R square, it's R. Okay. So let's look at the function which is taking the value 1 everywhere. The second function is x, the third function is x square. Let's check the linear independence or dependence of this. So suppose the linear combination is 0. Can I get 3 constants, at least one non-zero, such that the linear combination is 0? Now since this is true for every x in R, if I take x to be 0, what will happen? C1 will be 0. C1 0 gives me C2x plus C3x square is 0. So now I take, since this is true for every x in R, I can take x to be 1, x to be minus 1 in particular to get C2 and C3 also as 0. So that means I am getting whenever the linear combination is 0, all three constants will be forced to be 0. So at least one non-zero constant situation is not going to arise in this linear combination, and hence you have linear independence. So that's how you decide linear dependence or independence for more than two functions. For two functions, you just look at the ratio. If the ratio is a constant throughout the domain, you have linear dependence. If the ratio is not a constant throughout the domain, you have linear independence. And for three or more functions, you generalize it through the definitions that we have discussed just now. Now there is a theorem which relates to Wronskian and linear dependence or independence of solutions of a given differential equation. Suppose there is a differential equation which looks like y double dash. That means it's linear homogeneous differential equation of second order with continuous coefficients. So whenever you have this special type of equation, then there's a theorem which helps you to decide linear dependence or independence without going into the definition of dependence or independence. It says that suppose they are solutions, the solutions will be linearly dependent if and only if their Wronskian is 0, which is very obvious. If one solution is a scalar multiple of the other, then the Wronskian, which is a 2 cross 2 determinant, will have k, the ratio come. For example, y1 is k y2, let's say. Okay, so what will be the Wronskian of y1 and y2? You will write y1 y2 y1 dash y2 dash. So it will be y1 can be written as k y2, here you will have y2, here you will have k y2 dash, here you will have y2 dash. Obviously this is 0 because one column is a scalar multiple of the other column. So that way it's an obvious result. The proof is elementary, but not I am not going to discuss it in this video, otherwise the video will stretch way too long. So you just understand that if you have a second order homogeneous differential equation with continuous coefficients here, then you will have linear dependence of solutions if and only if their Wronskian is 0. You will have linear independence if Wronskian is non-zero. You will have linear dependence if Wronskian is 0. So we can use above theorem as an alternative to determine linear dependence or independence of two solutions. See, the definition of linear dependence or independence is valid for functions, and this theorem is valid for solutions of such a differential equation. So you have to keep that in mind. So a quick recap of what we have learned. We have linear dependence of two functions if their ratio is a constant throughout the domain, and linear independence if their ratio is not a constant. All right, and for two functions this definition works fine, but if you have three functions f, g, h, then you will have to take the linear combination c1f plus c2g plus c3h equal to 0. Linear combination equal to 0. If you are able to get at least one non-zero constant here satisfying that this linear combination is 0, then you will have linear dependence, and if all constants are forced to be 0, then you will have linear independence. So I hope the idea of linear dependence and independence is clear to everybody, and how do we connect it with the Wronskian of solutions of a linear homogeneous differential equation with continuous coefficients. So that's all for this video. I hope you like it. If you like it, please press the like button and pass it on. Thank you so much for watching.